Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, and today I'm excited to talk to you about, well, first of all, before I get into that, let's honor what today truly is. Today is the first day of Black History Month, and I want to take a moment just to honor this space because I don't think a lot of us do. A lot of us get pretty caught up in what's going on in our lives and the busy schedules, and we don't take a moment to reflect and honor what we have accomplished so far as a civilization, how far we've come. And that's really what we're here to talk about today, is that transformation and then that momentum. And I'm so excited to have a very special guest today on the Career Coffee Chat live show and podcast. So if you've never seen me before, you can find out more about me at coachyurban.com. And who am I? Well, what I am is I'm a certified executive coach, and I partner with emerging and evolving leaders so you can elevate your impact without sacrificing your well-being. And most importantly, Career Coffee Chat is here to help you advance your career and advance and just live a better life in general, quite honestly. So if you're feeling like you're living in the never normal, you're in the right place to learn more about how to navigate these very challenging times. And this term, never normal, borrowed with integrity from Ira Wolf, a previous Career Coffee Chat guest, that really accurately describes what we're living in. Yet, women and people of diverse backgrounds can tap into the momentum of this massive change to fuel your own career advancement. So today, again, I have a very special guest with me today, Katrina Booker. Katrina is she is the CEO and founder of Lead to Power. And what she does is she helps emerging women leaders raise the bar. She's hired by ladies looking to leave burnout behind and awake from a career coma. Katrina is also the president of the Women's Masters Network in Houston, Texas, and a certified leadership coach. And she's also recently had a certification from Cornell for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we'll talk more about during our show today. So I want to give a big round of applause and welcome to Katrina. Katrina, it's so glad to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. Now, we were talking backstage, Katrina and I were about how it's such a different time. And as Katrina mentioned more than once, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. What do we mean by that? Well, there are certain cycles of change. And right now we're going through a tremendous cycle of change. And there's some things that are a little challenging, with COVID and restrictions and this and that. But there's a lot of it that's very positive. And a lot of this around diversity, equity, and inclusion. For women and people of diverse cultural and ethnic backgrounds, this is a tremendous time to raise our voices and lift one another up. And this is the whole purpose of this particular show, is to understand, first of all, what's going on, what's the landscape look like, and how to make this a catalyst for your career advancement and achieve your goals and your dreams. So Katrina, I know we've been talking a little bit backstage about how this is such a tremendous time. And, the change that we've gone through from, I mentioned before, and I warned you, I would say it again. What we're seeing here is the death throes, the ugly, painful, gnarly death throes of a historical way of being, what we like to label the patriarchal society. It's very top down, white male driven, do as I say, not as I do, drinking buddy. That whole thing is dying a painful, slow death. And a lot of people are like, no, we will continue this mode of being. Well, wake up, sunshine.
I don't know.
It's not going to continue. Now, some people are further ahead than others, and depending on where you are in your journey, but this is a transformation that is happening right now. And now is a time for those people who have been reluctant, perhaps, to speak up, to find your voice. Right.
Which is so important. we were conversating briefly about, how I kind of started this journey. I didn't just wake up and go, oh, D&I certification for Cornell, let's do it. There was a path there.
Right.
And it started with, just being able or willing to put myself out there. And I always tell people I have never considered myself to be social justice activist or, that sort of community ground roots, type organizer. However, in this environment, as you stated, I felt as if, we've been talking about it, complaining about it in our circles,
yes.
over brunch at the the proverbial water cooler, shaking, looking at each other in confirmation. Did that just happen? Oh my gosh, we've been doing that for
sharing the looks across the conference room table,
sharing
right?
the looks, kicking
not
each other on the table,
not doing anything, not sharing our
all
voice
the things. For years, I am, 22 years at this particular company. So my professional career expands, about 28 years. And so now is my moment. And I also thought about, my mom, who participated 60s and 70s in her own way. And that was her once in a lifetime chance to participate in a societal shift and transformation. And so this is my opportunity. And I encourage everyone, there's different levels to it, of course, but I really honestly started by asking questions and speaking up.
Right.
That to me, that's just if you don't know what to do, that's where you can start.
Absolutely. Just by asking questions and politely and speaking up. And so I like to have an honest conversation. Up until recently, do you feel like people of color felt like they could speak up?
No. Not without the risk of being pulled from assignments, being marked, right, as a troublemaker.
Right.
And for those who have taken the risk to see how some of their career trajectory has flatlined or plummeted, is very much a discourager in speaking up. And so I will say, though, the opportunities were there, right? We have those EEOC protections and there are statutes and things in place. But when it comes to the day-to-day, and then you combine the required necessity of providing for your family, sometimes you're just like, I will deal with it. I'll complain about it to those who will listen, but I will show up. I'll do the work, and I'll keep going. And so, I one of the things that I've learned recently is that sometimes our disengagement has been, interpreted as, or was lost in translation, that our disengagement was we didn't care. But it's really that kind of shield of protection that you have to put up because you really just can't make change, or you feel as if there aren't enough of you to make a positive change. And so we just kind of put up the shield to protect ourselves, often interpreted as, they're disengaged from the team, right? And so now I think is our time to educate those who are in leadership as to when that disengagement shows up, kind of investigate. Okay, you came onto the team, you were very involved, engaged, lots of ideas, providing solutions. I'm seeing a shift there. What's going on? And then investigate that and listen to, what people have to say. But yeah, it has definitely traditionally been very risky. I mean, you're taking a risk in speaking up. A health risk, a financial risk, because there's a stress that goes along with speaking with HR when they've been given your name because you made a statement about something that you thought was unfair.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All of that.
All of that. Absolutely. Amen. I want to say hi to Cornisha tuning in from the Woodlands, and hi to Stephanie Thompson
Hello.
tuning in from San Francisco. Great to see you both today.
Thank you for
Stephanie
joining.
said I showed up earlier, so true. She's definitely understanding that. And I'd love to hear from any of you tuning in now or later if you felt like at any time that you didn't feel comfortable using your voice.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I have been subject to discrimination myself as a woman, being a very forthright individual, and have been brought up in a family that there was no, I don't know how to describe it. It was just like the whole idea of discriminating or acting differently towards someone because of their gender or ethnicity. It's a very foreign concept to me, because it wasn't like, it didn't even show up in my childhood. So it's just, I don't get it. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time understanding it. Mm-hmm. So when that would happen to me, it was just like, there's something wrong with you? Are you mental? Like why? What happened? And why do you think that's okay? But, when I was younger, in my 20s, mm-hmm. sometimes that would show up as, sexual harassment. And did I feel like I was comfortable? I didn't always feel comfortable saying something mm-hmm. about it. I would have to go talk to people. Okay, this person did this. Oh, well, that's just how he is. No. And I'd love to hear from anybody if you feel comfortable sharing, either mm-hmm. whether you're tuning in now or later, if you've been in a place where you felt like, I couldn't use my voice. I couldn't say, this guy came on to me and that's not okay. I don't care if he is the vice president, mm-hmm. right? I mean, because that's when some men, and when they get positions of power, they felt like they could take advantage of it. Now,
absolutely. And I'm going to jump in right there, because I think there's a shift that has also occurred when it comes to harassment. Thinking about, like 10 or 12 years ago, how that started is kind of like the same path that D&I is taking. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember when everyone, and one of my favorite episodes of The Office is when they had to do sexual harassment training. It was a nightmare. It was the worst thing. It was the best example of the worst. Yeah. But there was, this period of time where everyone was going through sexual harassment training. You had to go, at least every year mm-hmm. or every 2 years, you had to take the class again. And you're like, why do we have to be? Well, there's a learning curve. It's super great. And so I think now we're kind of doing that again with diversity and inclusion and social justice and shifting workplace culture to be more inclusive. Mm-hmm. There's the education point. There's the classes on microaggression, unconscious bias, because where it just, they were not informed and didn't care mm-hmm. to be informed. It's that repetition, right? That repetition mm-hmm. and training. And then we move from the training to, okay, now here's how we enforce. Here's how we, move to actually doing, following the things. But I do recall I used to work for the sheriff's department. I can't say which office, but we served for sheriff's department, which is completely male dominated. Worked night shift, right out of college. And I remember working with a young man. He was very nice, but he was almost on the edge of, sexual harassment. And I remember my friend and I talking about, I think what he's doing is inappropriate, but we didn't even know who to ask.
Right. Yeah.
Who do we confirm that with? And we got to the point where it was, okay, we don't want to be scheduled with this person. Right. And then they were, okay, well, why? Well, we'll try to accommodate. But then when we became more, no, we're not working with this person. Then it was, is there a particular reason why? Which started conversations. Right. But I just remember us saying, who do we talk to about that? Where do you go for that? And how do we end up not taking on the brunt of, the proving, right? Mm-hmm. And so now I see some similarities with the shift in diversity, inclusion, equity, where there's been some training, And now people are at least making the statement, coming to the table, bringing it to the forefront, trying to figure out, okay, who's the ombudsman? Who do I address this with? Where's HR? Who's my business partner? How do we turn that corner? How do
Where are my allies? What's the
where are my
environment
allies?
like?
How do I speak up for myself? Which is, very, very encouraging. There are some similarities in those shifts there, but then, we also have to credit right now the Me Too movement, which has really empowered everyone.
Yes.
It crosses, cultural, it crosses, backgrounds, it crosses ethnicity, it crosses class, right? To speak up when you have been or are in a situation that makes you feel uncomfortable,
right? Or discriminated against. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting. I'd like to go back to something you mentioned earlier about, if you aren't sure, like if you feel like you want to advocate for yourself or you want to advocate for DE&I or what have you, and you aren't sure how to show up in that space. And you were sharing with me your journey, Katrina, and how you're like, is this me? I don't know. Is this me? And I never really felt like I was, a DE&I advocate. And I was like, yes, absolutely, you are, because your presence is an intervention.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. It's a very powerful statement to keep in mind, because here's what we don't do such a great job of. And this is relatively gender and culture agnostic, to be fair. We don't do a good job of understanding our own impact. We don't empower ourselves. We disempower ourselves by our own negative self-talk or what we are, these beliefs, these false beliefs that don't help us, right? So we disempower ourselves, and we're not. When that happens, we don't feel like we have the impact. When in fact, you do. You have much more impact than you give yourself credit for. Everyone does.
One of the greatest shifts that occurred for me, speaking to that statement, was figuring out exactly what I bring to the table. It's very dangerous to show up at the table. So, for the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of talk about, get your chair, show up to the table, make space
for the table, right? Yeah. Which table?
Take the table. There's a lot of talk about the table, getting to the table. What's dangerous is not knowing what you bring to the table. And so one of the greatest shifts for me was discovering and being able to outline in a very succinct way what I personally, through my life experiences as an African-American Black woman, first generation college graduate, which, by the way, I didn't even realize I was that. I was so far removed from it until like 6 years ago. I had to look up the definition. What is a first generation? That is I am that. Like, what, what does that mean?
And an MBA.
How do I show up to the table? What does that mean? And so I think for women, for those who suffer with imposter syndrome, which is, the feeling that I'm at the table, but I don't deserve to be here, really do a deep dive into what am I bringing to the table naturally. Now, I always wanted to be the certain kind of person. I turned 40 and realized, I'm stop.
Yeah. Isn't it funny when you turn 40? It's such a freeing thing, ladies. Let me know. For those of you who are okay with sharing that, you get to a certain point, like in your 30s, you're like, I've got to do this, and I got to show up over here, and that, and I got to be this way, and blah, blah, blah. I conform to something. And when you hit 40, you're like, I don't care.
Listen, my strengths are my strengths.
I know who I am, and I will play to those.
I'm playing to my strengths. I have one of my clients, and when she came to me, she's like, she had this list of things that she wanted to work on, and I go, but are you those things? Are you those capabilities? Do you have them naturally? Okay. If not, let's focus on who you are. And then when you have opportunities, you know how you can contribute to a team. So a couple of years ago, 2 years ago now, I volunteered for a diversity and inclusion champions team, which was unheard of for our corporate structure. So we have employee resource groups, business resource groups, right? I think we have about 10 of them. But what happened was that our senior managing director decided, I'm going to create a diversity and inclusion champion initiative for my functional area. He was the first to do it. And so I volunteered for it. But because I'd done the work 3 or 4 years back, I knew exactly how I could contribute. If there's a workshop and we're discussing learning and development type topics, like, okay, what's a good article that people can read and how can we talk about that? Okay, how do we organize the initiatives? Because I'm a project manager by trade. All the things. I know exactly how I show up and how I can contribute. So that means I'm not volunteering for a committee or an experiment that doesn't
be a waste of your time.
That doesn't suit me. So now I'm, I have exposure, right? So that's on your list. Just on your career list.
Yeah.
Exposure
and
leadership, and knowing exactly how you contribute is so valuable. It gives you that boost of confidence because you are sure of what when there's some analysis that needs to be done, or we need to pull apart a project or pull apart an article. I am there. That is me. Hear me roar. There are some other things. I can do it.
Yeah.
I wanted to stress,
not in my strength zone. Thank you. I know so-and-so will be a great fit.
Great person.
Right.
I'll give you their contact information. Here it is.
Exactly. But being more comfortable with saying no. So this is the big thing. I want to say hi momentarily to Jorge and Mariama. Great to see you both. Jorge put some great comments around his background as a Colombian with missionary parents and grew up in many parts of the country, what he experienced with different differences in cultural backgrounds, and how trying to conform, perhaps I'm paraphrasing Jorge, pardon me if I get it wrong, but trying to conform to something that's not authentic can be damaging. And let's have a real conversation here. Don't we as women and people of diverse cultural backgrounds and people of color feel like we have to do more than perhaps we should? Oh yeah. Yeah, we do. We do.
Let's go there.
To get the extra certification and the this and the that, and when we have to show up, because it triggered me when you mentioned visibility. I have a quick story. Bear with me.
No, go ahead.
I have a friend. She is a person of color, and I love her dearly. She's wonderful. She's so smart. And because visibility is like that thing, of course, she's an overachiever, right? Do you see where I'm going with this? She volunteered for all the things. She did. She volunteered for all the things at her company. She is, I'll just say she was in the medical field as a practitioner of continuous improvement, right? So she did all the things, all the projects, but she was spread too thin. I mean, literally, she was sitting at the kitchen table one day, and her sister looked at her and said, "Sis," visiting her from out of state. She said, "Sis, you're here, but you're not here."
Right.
And she was doing at that time, she was doing her MBA. She was on like 4 boards, all these special projects, plus her role. I mean, she was all, and here's some things. As a friend, I knew she was always late to like everything. Right? Always liked everything. She never really had it together, and she was up for a promotion. And when we had lunch, she showed up late. She said, "I didn't get that promotion." And she goes, "It was a big wake-up call because I realized that I had overcommitted. So how I was showing up to leadership was basically as a non-completer. And they're not going to promote someone who's a non-completer."
No.
So she sabotaged herself. So here's something I want people to try to take to your heart. You are a beautiful, whole, gifted, resourceful individual.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have to, quote unquote, prove to anyone how smart you are, how capable you are. Show up in your zone of genius, play to your strengths, and do what you need to do that gives you the most ROI for what you want to do for your career advancement. But don't say yes to everything. Because whenever you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And
in an effort to prove ourselves, right? We think we have to prove to everyone, so we sign up for everything.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because
how many of you have done that? I would love to hear from you tuning in an hour later. How many of you have signed up for all the things?
All the things, and
me.
Then you find yourself stretched too thin. And in my parents' defense, that's my mother, Alice. And as I speak of her, my mom was corporate, very corporate. She worked, for several different companies, but she's very corporate. And her thing was, listen, I don't have the papers. You need the papers, degrees, right? Certifications, all the things. And she's like, because you're African-American, because you're Black, you need to show up and work twice as hard to be considered half as good. Right? So you grow up hearing that. You grow up hearing that. You grow up hearing that. And that's how you show up, right?
Right.
But then when you reach burnout and you can't determine why am I burned out? Because you're overworking, over contributing, overdoing.
And then you can't show up in the space that's your zone of genius. You can't show up there because you're all over the map. You can't. You're all over the map. You're fried, or
the position is just, you're working really, really hard to prove yourself in a position that's not suited to who you are, right? Because we just haven't taken the time. We were so busy striving, getting the things, the accolades, all the things. And so I think that for its time, that was great conversation, and it got me to where I am. Absolutely, let's go. We're talking about a culture shift. Time to shift into a different way of approaching this. Find out who you are, your zone of genius, how you work. One of the best things I found out was my work personality. Both you and I are everything disc. We both, are consultants for that. Finding out how you work and how you interact with other people shaves off some of that anxiety. If you're a D, I'm an S, knowing how to flex to your style, take some of that tension off the top. And so now I'm not working as hard to prove myself. I can just speak to you in your language. When you're consulting or you're navigating, having conversations about shifting workplace culture, knowing, okay, I'm talking to this person. From what I know, there appear to be an people, right? So they're
don't get into the details.
They talk a lot. They're very, they like to have
emotion.
They like to go to lunch.
Yeah.
They want to go to lunch. Let's talk about it over lunch. Well, if you're a C, which is like the compliance, you're like, I don't want to do all that. I just want to give you the numbers, right? And
send them an email first. Let them read it.
Then absolutely. And so I think it's so powerful related to, women, their place in the workplace. We talk a lot, know when to dial it back. We get nervous. We talk a lot. We talk real fast. We move. But okay, if you're talking to someone that your counterpart, absolutely. If they're the same style, absolutely. If not, flex to their style so that you can have the conversation, negotiate, the terms, talk about the things, come to some agreement, and start making that shift in the culture that's going to make a difference, right? I promise you, it's been one of the most powerful things that I've done in the past 5 to 6 years, is doubling down on who I am, how I approach things, how I work, and rolling that into all the aspects. But today we're talking about the workplace and leadership doing that also helps you to be seen as a leader, right? Because you're not going after all the things.
Absolutely. You know what you want.
You know what you want, and you know what you can do. And so when you're applying for a promotion and you're talking about what you bring to the table, this is me. This is how I can contribute. This is what I can do for your team, because this is how I work.
You're a closer, you're a finisher. Absolutely. So you're thinking about, elevating your career, particularly in this never normal. Now I'm totally borrowing that term with integrity from Ira Wolf, who really used that quite a bit. He's fantastic. The millennial and a baby boomer body is how he describes himself. His newsletters are hilarious. Sign up for them; they're fantastic. But anyway, but in the never normal, what are we seeing right now? So it's a very exciting time. First of all, yes, it's challenging. Yes, there's some ugly, and it's super exciting because right now we're seeing massive changes in our society and how we behave as a cultural whole. Now, look, here's the deal. Here's some truth. All right. There will be a lot of people out there with agendas that want to keep us divided and separate.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay? They want to.
Absolutely.
Because a separate, divided nation is easier to control for whatever their agenda purposes happen to be. I'm just being honest with you. All right. That's how people in positions of power control fractions of our society. All right. That's just how it works. And that's covered in neuroscience. You can look it up. All right. So that's one thing. So keep that in mind when you start hearing divisiveness, and really double down on the togetherness. Because us as a together unit, as a community, we're much better together. We are. Why, whatever. I'm Indian, white, that's Native American. It doesn't matter, where you're from. Let's double down and focus on what our community as a whole. And maybe that's easy for me to say because I grew up in a family that I didn't understand that there was differences. I don't know how to explain that, but it didn't. So when people were like, "Oh, they're," I'm like, "What?" It's just weird for me. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. Come together. Now, you as an individual, how can you take advantage of this amazing time? Because we right now are the authors of what happens next.
Yes.
We're in this ugly, tumultuous, chaotic, slightly weird, lucky time that's cool and stressful.
All at the same time.
All at the same time. All the things right now, people. All the things. So, you thought you were getting a break? Oh, yeah. Anyway, no. So strap on your seatbelts, lock yourself down, because right now you're getting ready to author what happens next. Keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Well, what's beautiful right now is what I'm seeing is if you're a person of culture or a person of color, you're seeing more opportunities. Maybe we can take that belief that, I have to show up 210%, or as a woman, I have to do more than my male counterparts. Maybe we can take that and go and throw it away. Really focus on who you are, as you mentioned, Katrina, and also know where you're going. That's really important, because, and I'll tell you why it's important. You have to know where you're going. And yes, it may shift and change over time. Experiences and life happens. Maybe you have a family, whatever, right? However, keep that in mind. Always keep that a target in mind, because that way you can reverse engineer to understand what steps help you get there. And that stops you from saying yes to everything, not knowing, well, maybe, no, stop, maybe, no, maybe, no, stop that. Keep your energy focused on what nets the most outcome. So ROI, return on investment for your energy, is a big deal, because right now, side note, because we're going through so much stress, our cups runneth over when it comes to cortisol levels and burnout and stress. We're taking on a lot because we're going through
in
so
multiple
much
areas.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Multiple areas.
Yeah.
And it's running over in areas that we are normally okay. So now it's, I'm normally pretty good with my family. We're we're this, we're that, we have a structure, the thing, this is always, running over, but this is, and so now the family is being impacted by all the things, and you're like, okay, wait, what? So we're in burnout in different areas of our lives. I talk about the fact that I don't really talk about balance a lot. I don't really believe in balance. I believe in harmony. And I picture life as, there's probably about 12 or 13 different areas of life. They live in a box, and the bubbles are fluid. The size of the bubbles for each area, they're fluid. And so at some point, family, you have a baby, your family takes over. That bubble
gets bigger, right? Mm-hmm.
That one gets bigger. But if the others don't decrease, and you're not intentional about ensuring that the others don't decrease, you're squeaked. You're in burnout mode. No one wants to talk to you. No one wants to be around you. You're having all of this physical manifestation,
and you're not able to show up for your family.
Oh my gosh, you can't show up for anyone, yourself or anyone else. Even as a caregiver to my mom, if I don't ensure that the other bubbles are manageable, and then hers gets squeezed out, and then 2 weeks later she's like, I'm out of medicine. Oh, wait, what happened? So it's, it's making sure that we think of life as not just always trying to juggle and balance all the things, and realize that sometimes that work bubble is going to increase. You've got this project that's large, or you're taking on a new position, you're finding your way in a new corporate culture, and you're trying to show up as a leader. So that bubble's going to increase. Okay, let's have a conversation about all the other bubbles.
Bingo. And we need to have more conversations. We need to have more conversations. And leaders, if you're tuning in, create an environment in the workplace where people can have conversations.
Have a conversation. Right. And I think what I really like about this generation, this new workforce that is coming in behind us, is they are very articulate about their capacity.
Yes.
So where we were taking on way too many things, being responsible for all the things. And so they're like, no, that doesn't suit my lifestyle.
Oh, but we think they're lazy. But wait, they're not.
No, boundaries. No. Boundaries.
Yeah. Just stuff that we've not been doing. Let's be honest. Again, honest conversation. Let's just say what it is.
Honest conversation.
We have, Gen Xers, that's what I am. Nobody talks about us. We don't, We're the middle child. We're squeezed in between boomers and millennials. Nobody talks about us.
Yep.
Okay, let's just call it what it is. We just conform to the process that was in place, sucked it up, and didn't like it, burned out, miserable. But those people who are identified with being a millennial are now in positions of decision making within organizations, and they're saying, no, this doesn't work. This old, nasty way of being is not okay. And that doesn't mean they're lazy. It just means they're more focused on wellness and well-being, which we've all sacrificed to our detriment for decades. That doesn't mean we're more awesome people. It just means we put up with crap that we shouldn't have.
And that's, and that's really a shift. And so let's talk to women who are aspiring to be leaders, because that's not what we wanted to talk about today. But I think it's important, and I'm putting on kind of shifting to my leadership hat here. I think it's very important to engage in active listening. As a leader, previously it's been, you stated earlier, do as I say, and that's it, right? These are the mandates. These are the precepts, commandments, instructions, laws. This is it, right? And there were no questions. It was, you basically took the requirements and went back and built it, right? You came up with the process and you did it. And so I think I would really encourage, it's something called, your listening, your emotional IQ, your emotional intelligence. If you have not taken a class on emotional intelligence, improving your emotional, it's EQ, I believe it's called, Really, really
EI or EQ, yeah.
EI, take some classes on that and really develop, because that's what's going to give you success with the shift in workplace culture and being a leader. The leaders of not listening and not attempting to understand and not engaging will swiftly become a thing of the past. And so for women who are in leadership or looking for promotion, I think that's something that we really should focus on. Now, one thing about women is that it's been said that I saw this article yesterday, and it was like women who are on the boards, banks with more women on the boards, like do less nefarious activities, like are caught up in less. And I was like, yes, we're pretty empathetic. We're pretty, our moral compass is usually, well, that's just not right. Let's find another way to do it.
Right.
And so, taking that strength and marrying that with the ability to listen and engage, so that your people feel not just diverse. We want a diverse workplace, absolutely, but it has to be inclusive and engaging. So I wanted to be sure to point that out, is that we have to be able to listen, take the feedback without being defensive and emotional, and then, okay, what can we do? What changes can we make to the workplace, to the team, that can accommodate and make our employees, our teams, our peers feel included and keep them engaged.
And to that point, as a leader, as someone who's looking to move up in an organization, or there's two tracks here. I'll come back to the looking to move up in career advancement, but really focus on the leadership mentality. Historically, we have felt like I need to don this mask, right? The expected leadership mask for that company, whatever that is. And if we think that is going to help people feel like they can further a DE&I culture, that is not the case, because leaders set the tone. So if you, leader, coming in, donning a mask, being inauthentic, that's not going to encourage people to be authentic either. So if you want that inclusive culture, you yourself need to be authentic to who you are, and not try to be someone you're not. That's very important. And I really want this to sink home, because it's been historically the case that people, whether they're a woman, they try to act like men in leadership positions. No, actually, you have so much natural leadership prowess. It breaks that as a woman. Hello. You do not even act like a man. No. Be yourself and leadership position. Just know there are a few things as a leader that's expected, and working on yourself to be a better person is one of the most important things.
Yes, absolutely.
And understanding yourself and being able to understand others. That's really the most important thing, and being authentic to yourself. Do you agree, Katrina? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I agree wholeheartedly. It's I remember reading an article a couple of years ago, like the year of the woman. I think it was around 2020, maybe 2019 is the year of the woman. There were like several women that year that were appointed to, some really large Fortune 500 boards, as presidents. And I remember thinking, but how are they working with the team? What does that look like on a daily basis? Do they have to transform, or are they able to be themselves? And I think in those years past and up to now, there has been a transition or transformation where women are able to show up as their authentic selves, as mothers. I have children. I am a mother. I am going to the soccer games.
Right. And yes, I'm a senior vice president. Or,
yes.
What have you. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. They didn't feel comfortable doing that because
absolutely.
somehow seemed wrong. So what's the beautiful thing about now is that's fading.
Yes, absolutely. It is.
Fading big time. So now that leads me to our part of our conversation before we wrap up is how can you capitalize on this momentum? I won't say capitalize, but leverage this momentum for your own well-being. And we've talked about knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about knowing your target. That's really important. And then be able to speak up with your authentic voice,
Mm-hmm.
not saying yes to everything, focusing on those activities that net you the most ROI based on said target, and also knowing that there will be no point in our lives where we get to sit back and lay in a hammock and go, everything's just perfect.
Mm-mm.
There will be days.
A half a day.
There will be days. But it's really managing the ebb and flow of life.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that from a place of center balance. I believe in centering. I believe in really creating that zone where you show up most powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a beautiful thing. I don't care what color you are or what gender you are. If you're able to show up in yours, quote unquote, your zone, you will shine. It doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But where we sabotage ourselves is when we let those voices get to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
That tell us that we're small and we don't matter. We should do this and we're not good enough. And blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened to me.
Yep.
Right? It's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any words of wisdom you'd like to leave people with, Katrina?
One thing that I want to add is there's a term that I learned. I've felt it for a long time. It's a term called arbitrary status hierarchies. And it's when others make their differences or in regards to you are not based on actual differences. It's based on their perspective on your differences,
right,
competence and your abilities. It's not based on actual limitations or actual differences. It's just based on what somebody happens to have be born as, right? So they think, oh, she's a woman. I need to explain this to her 12 times before she can understand it because women are slow on the pickup.
Particularly when you take your car in for service.
Oh, absolutely. And then, there's, African-American, inherently not going to work hard, right? So then that kind of feeds into the I have to work.
Not such BS, but
so
anyway.
Knowing that people will have those status hierarchies and about you, to me, just being aware of that was good for me, because I lived in a bubble for such a long time that where I just thought if I stuck my head down, worked hard, that it would pay off.
Right.
So pull your head up. I just saying, be aware. I'm saying, be aware of what's going on around you. I like to share this experience. I was in a meeting a couple of years ago, and I don't even remember what the statement was. It was probably, a Black colloquialism. I'm not even sure what the statement was, but there was a managing director in the room that thought it was so funny. And to the point where she was just tickled to death in laughter. Now, no one else in the room was laughing that hard. Like, it was just like a small, slight statement, 1-2 sentences, short phrases, and she's bowling over in laughter. And the person that there was another managing director in the room, and she just kind of gave her like the elbow, like, "Hey, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And I remember thinking to myself, "What just happened here?" It took me a long time to come to terms with what happened. That she was basically laughing at me, who I am, and how I express myself. Being aware of that, those arbitrary status hierarchies, has helped me to show up differently and also see those things and address them in the moment. And if I don't address it in the moment, I address it immediately following, right? So I want to encourage those who are listening, don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. So it happened. Listen to yourself, listen to your gut instinct. It happened, and find how you are going to speak up for yourself. Right. I also want to encourage everyone to get a mentor and a mentee. you should always be mentoring someone, and you should always have a mentor because you need to have those conversations. I saw a lot of growth in my career when I had like 2 amazing mentors for like 3 years in a row. And I saw so much growth and just like a takeoff in my trajectory for my career in those years. And I was like, why didn't we have a mentoring program before? So I want you to agree to have a mentor and always be mentoring someone else. Now, you can reverse mentor, right? So you can always mentor someone who's even been, in their careers longer than you. They can learn from you, right?
Absolutely. Depending on what it is.
Yeah. They can always learn from you. And then you can, pass it along, bring someone else along behind you who's just starting or just starting in their career or just starting in that industry or in that company, help them out. So those are one things I find it's very rewarding when you're able to help someone figure it out and then have someone to walk beside you to help you figure it out. And
your support group too.
Yes. And
find out who you're
outside.
Yeah. Outside your company.
Outside
your company.
Outside
your company. Just understand who your supporters are and leverage those. And if you're thinking about, furthering yourself in a particular path, a couple people connecting with those individuals who are further down the road than you are is tremendously helpful. And understanding how you can get there.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up the show, I just want to put this out here one more time because it is powerful. Just remember that your presence is an intervention.
Yeah.
If you're questioning whether, you should speak up or own your own impact or whatever that looks like, your presence is an intervention. When it comes to authoring the future, you have so much more impact than you give yourself credit for. We all do.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing. If you don't own your impact, then you're irresponsible with it. There's still impact, but you're not intentional with it. So leveraging that and being intentional with it is so important.
Yeah.
And I am beyond enthusiastic with the potential where our future can go right now and where we can grow as a culture and come together as a community. I'm really excited. Just keep in mind, it's up to each one of us to author the future that we want.
Yes.
And not just accept wherever the wind happens to blow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chart your path. It changes, it shifts. Did I ever think I would be, at the forefront of D&I, working on now creating a masterclass for companies who are looking to shift their workplace culture? Did I ever think 4 years ago I'd be doing that? Absolutely not. But because I did chart a path and started motion forward, right? That momentum propels you sometimes in different directions, but it's the start. So chart your journey, take action, and take risk, and be a disruptor to your level of comfort and one step above.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. To all of you tuning in an hour later, it's been such a pleasure. Having you on the show, Katrina.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Erin. I enjoy chatting with you always, and thank you so much for having me on today. I super appreciate it. This has been great conversation.
It has been so much fun and so great to see all of you today. And if you have any questions, you're watching the replay later, just know you can give either one of us a shout out, put a comment in, or send us an email, whichever. We're here to help you and make sure that you, my friends, keep elevating.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram, coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.